HR Break Room is brought to you by Paycom, empowering employees nationwide with HR and payroll tech in one easy app. Learn how Paycom simplifies business for your entire workforce at paycom.com. Welcome on into HR Break Room, Paycom's podcast dedicated to having quick conversations on the hot topics in HR. I'm your host, Morgan Beard, and in today's episode, we'll be speaking with Charlene Laube about the role learning and development plays for organizations in 2022. Now, before we dive in, how about a little background about our guest? Charlene is a senior certified professional through the Society for Human Resource Management. She's also the founder of the popular HR Bartender blog, which has been recognized as one of the top 5 blogs read by HR professionals. You got to check it out. And she's also the president of ITM Group Incorporated, an HR consulting and training organization named one of the top 100 Florida small businesses. She does a lot, she knows a lot, and that's why we invited her here to the HR Break Room. Charlene, here in the HR Break Room, right here in OKC. You've been here before, but it's been a while, so thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I am delighted. It's so good to be back in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it treated you well last time, so you decided to make a return visit, and we appreciate that.
So
hey, we'll have you back again in the future, too.
Looking forward to it.
That's right. But hey, so I mentioned in the intro, you do so many things. You talk about so many things. We could go on in all kinds of different areas for this podcast. But today, we want to talk about learning and development. It seems like that specific area has kind of been fluid and agile and moving all over the place, especially the last couple of years. You know, you look back in 2020 and everything kind of switched more virtual and training there. Then in 2021, it was more owning and maybe getting more engagement out of that. We're in 2022 now, halfway through the year. Quite simply, where are we now with L&D?
Well, one of the things that I think organizations have to think about is what do they want to do with their L&D programs? You know, one of the things that we hear about on a regular basis is companies did a lot of hiring, maybe the first, few months of the year. And maybe now they're discovering that the people that they hired don't necessarily have all the skills that they thought. And this could be a good problem for an organization to have. Maybe over the past couple of years, as you mentioned, we've been reworking things and companies have a new way of doing things and they need for employees to learn those new skills, new processes, new procedures. We're all trying to move forward and learning and development gets you there.
And for you, I mean, what have you seen, I guess, are the biggest obstacles or just anything to overcome from an organizational standpoint with these changes? I mean, have you seen such a change, after the shutdown of 2020 to where we are now? Or is that kind of how it goes, it goes through ebbs and flows? Or is this just truly a new landscape and everyone's kind of learning on the fly?
I'm glad you asked that question because it was funny. My local newspaper recently had an article talking about how onboarding should still have a virtual component.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I think about is like a couple of years ago, we kind of all went virtual. As many people as could possibly go virtual. We all started working out of our homes. Everything was a Zoom call. That's what we did. And a lot of CEOs who maybe 2 years ago, if you had suggested to them, think about online learning, think about, more remote work, they would have said, nah, no way. But then they call and they're like, I didn't think we could pull this off, but we did. I really hope that companies, to your comment about shifting, I know we all want some vision of normal, and we want to do some of the things that we really enjoyed a few years ago. But we probably have learned some things over the past couple of years.
Just a couple,
And good things about the way we want to run our business, good things about technology, and the things that we can do with technology that we want to make sure we take forward the best of the best. So I think that there are some opportunities here, which is kind of why I'm so excited to talk about learning and development today, where we can take the things that were working really well a couple of years ago and mesh them with some of the things that we've learned over the past couple of years and turn it into even stronger learning for the organization.
And it kind of goes to what we were talking about off air. You can't just scrap what you were doing 2 years ago, even if it was working, just because maybe we're quote unquote on the other side of it. You can't scrap away everything. You might want to keep some of the things you did learn. Is that kind of what you're saying as well?
Exactly. If you had let's say, in your orientation program, you had a small component that you used to do live, and over the past couple of years, you've created an online learning program for it. Keep the online learning program.
Yeah, why not? Why change it? Just to change it,
Or just to say, we went back to the way things were.
Exactly. So it's more about adapting and keeping things. And while we didn't expect what happened in 2020, some things maybe are good out of it. So why not keep it going?
Exactly.
But a part of, go ahead.
I was going to say, if for whatever reason we have to make a quick shift, then we can do it.
Yeah, easy. Because that kind of allowed people to think on the fly.
Exactly.
Because another thing we were talking about, some companies maybe said, I didn't think we could do this, but we did it. So does that give, I guess, organizations kind of more confidence to handle things that may come their way, regardless of what it might be?
Hopefully. I mean, I hope at the end, I don't want to say the end of this, but I hope that organizations, as they're starting to put their return to the office strategies back in place, they're doing a little debrief. I am a big fan of a 2-question debrief. It doesn't have to be long and elaborate, but ask yourself 2 questions. What did we do well? And what would we do differently next time? And ask the first question first. So what did we do well? We have a tendency to go straight for all the things that we didn't do well. What did we do well? There were things we did well. And not what did we do wrong, but what would you do differently next time? And learn from those lessons and take them forward.
It can make you better going forward.
Exactly.
And another thing out of 2020 that we saw, the Great Resignation is getting a lot of publicity, for lack of a better word there. A lot of people are talking about the Great Resignation, and with that comes a talent shortage, maybe on the hiring side. So people are doing more and more different things than they ever have before. So how does that impact L&D at organizations with that oncoming change?
One of the things that could be happening from an L&D perspective is that there could be lots of little things that employees need to learn. And L&D departments might not have the bandwidth to create a whole bunch of programs. So instead, what they might be in a position to do is create like micro-learning. We're going to create small learnings that people can download on demand. We do this in our personal lives right now.
Absolutely.
I like to cook. So one of the things that I've personally been trying to do is learn how to roast a chicken. And when you roast a chicken, you have to truss it, tie it up with the twine in order to, roast it. Well, I go on YouTube, I watch a 90-second video on how to truss a chicken.
Then you're a pro.
And then I go on with my day. And if I need to watch it again, I go back, I do the video. Let's take how we've already been conditioned. You can upload a short video, you can put it in your LMS, and when employees need it, it's right there for them. And they can get on with their day. And those kinds of things will really help learning in the organization.
I wish I could just watch one cooking video once or twice and then get it down. I'm doing it probably about 10 different times. So you're on another plane than I am there. But kind of switching the focus, back to L&D and hiring individuals and maybe this new talent pool that they're dealing with. Should they hire individuals who need, I guess, new skills or new skills training, or should they be focusing on upskilling and reskilling their current employees, and why?
I hate to answer a question with it depends, but this is going to be a lot of it depends. What's your organization going through? Some of it could be what's your industry doing, what's happening in your particular geographic location. I mean, for example, I have a hospitality background, and you're seeing the hospitality industry change some of the ways that they offer services to the public, to guests at hotels and restaurants and things like that. Those are things that are going to continuously be changing, and employees coming into server roles or bartenders or housekeepers, they're going to have to regularly receive updates on the new way of doing things.
And when it comes to upskilling or reskilling, what is the, I guess, maybe response from the employees that are currently in organizations or workplaces? Is there a pushback? Are people, I guess, hesitant to maybe receive new training on the job? Are they kind of maybe stuck in their ways in sometimes? Or do you think people are kind of learning to adapt because they have to?
I think some of this is employees just want to know what they're supposed to do. Like, I'm cool with whatever I'm supposed to do. Just make sure that I know what I'm supposed to do and that I can do it well. You don't have to answer this question, but have you ever been in a situation where you've gone through a training program and you walk out of the room and you're like, I have no clue whether or not I can do what the training program, and not because the training wasn't maybe complete enough.
Yeah.
The feeling that I feel like I didn't get everything that I was supposed to get out of this.
Maybe their aim was in the right direction, but maybe the execution was a little off, perhaps.
So there's nothing worse than feeling that sense of, I'm a smart person, but I can't figure this out. And you don't want employees to leave training with that going through their head. You want them to leave saying, I can do this.
And how much of that maybe, or not, is generational? You talk about the different kind of generations we have in the workforce, where you have some baby boomers, you have Gen Z and Gen Y and all this coming up in the ranks. I mean, does that matter? Generations? Does that affect L&D and maybe how they implement these training programs? Or I guess, how do they tackle that with the varying age differences in the workplace, trying to learn or relearn things?
Okay, I might say something that's incredibly unpopular, but I'm not a huge generational person. I think we all want the same things out of work. I think people want to work for a company that they can be proud of. I think they want to be paid fairly for the work that they do. I think they want a manager that's going to support them. And I think that they want to know that the company is going to invest in their learning. And I don't hear people of a certain age bracket going, oh no, we don't care about those things. Those are things that only apply to other individuals. What I do think organizations and employees need to figure out is what I need to learn and how I need to learn it, and be in a position where you can articulate that. I think a lot of times employees, maybe they get put on the spot or something like that where, well, what do you need to know? Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, I didn't expect that conversation. We need to set employees up for success, allowing them to explore, this is what you need to be successful. And they need to start learning enough about themselves that they can say, you know what? I need to improve my communication skills. And I believe the way that I can improve my communication skills is by going to this class. Or in another case, that someone might say, I need to get better at problem solving and I want to read this book. So it's not only
self-awareness.
Yes. Self-awareness about what I need to learn and being self-aware enough to know how I like to learn it.
And getting out of your comfort zone. You got to, I guess, kind of be comfortable being uncomfortable when it comes to, relearning or learning new things and kind of going on that. So would you say employees have to learn how to be, I guess, comfortable getting out of that comfort zone to kind of embrace this?
Yeah. And some of it is, I think a manager can play a role in this conversation. A manager might look at an employee and say, I know that you like to, I know you like to read, but I think for this particular topic, I'd like to see you stretch and go do this instead. Or, for example, one of the forms of learning that's very popular, and it's a form of learning, but it's not necessarily a training program, is when you ask somebody to take on a special assignment. Hey, Morgan, I've got this special assignment. I think it would be great for you and your learning and your career.
Let's go.
I know it's not something that you typically like to do, but I want you to think about it because I think it would be good for your career. But if we have that relationship, if we're supporting each other, then if I say to you, hey, I want you to stretch outside of your comfort zone because I think this would be good for you and good for your career, hopefully you'll take that to heart and you'll think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes it can be a good thing. Maybe these organizations are asking employees to do something maybe that they're comfortable with that they didn't know that they could do. Or maybe they're teaching something about themselves, maybe like, oh, wow, I can do more. I could do this differently. Is that maybe kind of a good byproduct sometimes of this as well?
Yeah, one of the things that's great is some of the industries that I've worked in, I've had an opportunity to do special assignments where my bosses said, hey, we're going to loan you out for 3 or 4 months over here, and those have been wonderful opportunities for me to get exposed to things that I hadn't traditionally been exposed to, build relationships within the organization. But it also teaches me that every once in a while, I need to step outside of my own comfort zone.
And kind of going back a step, how much should learning mirror working methods? You talked about it already, so we can be brief on this one, but how much should learning mirror working methods in terms of on-the-job training? How much should it, I guess, kind of go hand in hand with what you're actually going to be doing?
Well, I'm going to put a design hat on for just a second and oversimplify things. But when you're talking about learning, to me, there are things that people need to know and there are things that people need to do. All right. If I'm conveying to someone something that they need to do, like let's say, for example, we work in a restaurant and I want to teach you how to open a bottle of wine. I will open a bottle of wine, you'll watch, and then I'll hand you a bottle of wine and say, here, you do it.
And I'll fail and I'll make a mess and do it terribly.
And you'll do it again. But the idea is that if it's something you need to know how to do, one of the best ways to teach someone is to say, here's how you do it. Here's an example. Now you do it. If it's something you need to know, that's a little bit different because how do you apply it? If I say, let's have a conversation about upselling and or these are the best burgers to serve with this particular wine that we're opening. That's knowledge. Now what I might do is quiz you on the method to ensure comprehension might change depending upon whether I'm trying to pass along something you need to know or something that you need to do. You can do them both in an on-the-job environment, but I think organizations and managers, maybe managers who are doing this on the floor in the trenches, need to recognize which one they're trying to convey.
Yeah. That's a little important, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Well, I think sometimes what happens is people say, I told them, but they didn't go back and quiz them to make sure that the transfer of knowledge happened.
It's like old school, like going through school, through grade school. You learn something, you get quizzed on it. Why change that when we're adults and on the job? This kind of goes to my next question, talking about how organizations can avoid when they're training their employees. How can you get away from just the plethora of training programs, the designated training programs? And you kind of mentioned it there a little bit, but how do they get away from that rather than just a computer assignment? Hey, go in there and read this and do that. Is it more, like you said, on hand, on the job, and kind of show them what they're going to be doing, like in live action, real time?
I think that your learning and development function, if you have one, and if you don't, figure out who can be the coordinator of this activity. But training should align with organizational goals. And when we talk about organizational goals, think of it as multi-level. There are basic goals that every company needs to do. And then there are compliance goals that companies have. And then there are strategic goals that the organization wants at the same time. So you should be able to link training to a goal. And that goes back to your conversation. We were talking about, on-the-job training. I, as a manager, shouldn't just say, here, do it, because we have to check something off on a box. Yeah. I should show you the connection between what you're doing and how it impacts the organization. That's the first step in creating engagement. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about the end result of learning programs, but learning can create that connection to the company because I can see how my work impacts the bottom line or impacts the customer. And then once I have that connection, that makes me want to stay.
You mentioned engagement there. Another part of that might be excitement. How do companies or organizations get their workforce or new employees engaged, as you said, and excited about learning?
If you're introducing a new learning program, I'm a big fan of pilots, a big fan of pilot programs. You can, a pilot program typically is doing like a dry run of the program. But I think when you do a pilot, invite your best cheerleaders who are going to go out and say, oh, this is great, but invite your harshest critics, because if you can convince them, you give them an opportunity to weigh in about the program, then they'll go out and say, you know what? I saw this program. I was a little skeptical at first, but it's really very good. I gave them some feedback. They incorporated that feedback. You ought to be a part of this program. Those are the individuals that need to also be included in the rollout of new learning programs.
A little good cop, bad cop?
If that's what, but the point is, your skeptics can give you some valuable feedback that you want to incorporate in the program, and you can, that only makes the program better.
Yeah. And so we're talking about how to do this and how to get it started and how to implement it. But how do you get started when creating an overall strategy when it comes to L&D and this new evolving, workforce that we're seeing? What are the steps to get started first and foremost?
Think about this. A lot of companies know how to do a traditional gap analysis. So use a tool that you're very familiar with. Where are you right now? Are there programs that you have that are working great? Do you have programs that maybe need to be revised? Do you have programs that you just, topics that you just don't have? But think about where you are right now, and then think about where you want to be. And, let's say, for example, the company was implementing an LMS. This would be a common activity. These are the programs we have right now that we want to upload into our LMS. But these are the programs we have right now that we might need to make some adjustments to. All right. Now we have to think about how we're going to bridge the gap. We might have to prioritize things, okay, these are the ones we're going to do first because we think that they'll have the most impact on the operation, and then we can move forward there. So it could make some sense to do that traditional gap analysis. I'm also a big fan of something called a SMART plan. SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, actionable. I happen to like the R being responsible and time bound. Okay. So whenever you create an action plan, let's say in this case to launch a training program or bridge the gap, put that plan together. Specific says, what's the goal? Measurable is how do we know when we've achieved success? Actionable are the action steps that it takes to get you there. R is who is responsible for each step. And T, when is it going to get done? Timely.
Wow, perhaps the most important part right there, huh?
Exactly. And that allows you to keep that top of mind. You and I were talking off camera about how SMART can be used for everything in the organization. You can use it for meeting minutes. People can use it for their own personal development plans. But if you taught every employee through the orientation and onboarding process how to use SMART, then it becomes part of culture.
Yeah. Kind of embedded.
It becomes embedded. And whenever you need to do something, an employee will go, I'll get you a SMART plan on that.
Wow.
And so it becomes
just like that.
Just like that.
Well, we've been talking, an organizational standpoint. First of all, I feel like the conversation just started, but we're wrapping up. I'm about to ask your final thoughts, but we've been talking about things mainly from an organizational standpoint. But for a moment, I want to talk to the individuals, maybe people out there that are listening to this that might be in the workforce, reskilling, skilling, upskilling, and basically tackling this new landscape that we're talking about. What's your advice for becoming a lifelong learner for people that are in this position right now?
First of all, be curious.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to pick up test out a new blog or a new podcast, but be curious. If you don't know something about a particular topic, say, I'm gonna learn more about this.
Check out HR Bartender or HR Break Room.
Exactly.
Why not?
But also listen to new voices. Don't be afraid to listen to a voice other than your own, and you make the decision as to whether or not that's a voice you want to continue to listen to. Sometimes I like to listen to people who are different than me to help refine my thoughts. And I need all of those perspectives. So be curious, open yourself up to new voices. And, we were talking about SMART plans. Don't be afraid to put your own learning plan together.
And like you just said before that, you don't want to be in an echo chamber, in a silo, because that you become a prisoner of your own mind. Maybe you surround yourself with people that think like you, yes men, maybe to an extent, and you hear the same things, and maybe things are changing. So you need to step outside of, I guess, that comfort zone, going back to what we're talking about earlier, and hear different things and get different opinions and let that kind of maybe set you free in a way.
And you might like it.
Yeah, hey, you never know. Of course, that might be a good start there for that one. But Charlene, like I said, it feels like we just got the conversation started. I do want to thank you again for coming all the way to Oklahoma City here, joining us in studio right here on the headquarters of Paycom. And we hope to see you again. Maybe we can get you scheduled for another one.
Let's do it. And thanks everyone for listening.
Be sure to follow and subscribe to HR Break Room on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. For more episodes, visit hrbreakroom.com or follow us on social media. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and we can't wait for you to join us again inside the HR Break Room.